Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing-related tweets, or you can subscribe to the channel, click that notifications button, and get a new notification whenever a new video is uploaded. Let's talk boxing. Listen, do me one favor, though. I'm going to discuss some very controversial topics in this particular video. Please, I implore you, at least hear the whole video, listen to what I'm actually saying, think about what I'm saying, and then give your opinion. Because too many people get emotional when somebody disagrees with them or they go against the narrative, the prevailing narrative, or against the tide without actually listening to what the person's saying, and they want to jump down his throat. And this has happened to me quite a bit lately, and I've had other subscribers get involved and say, did you even watch the video? Are you actually listening to what he had to say? Because it might have been something I went on to address, or you just misunderstood what I was trying to say, right? Now, obviously, the majority of you guys are wonderful. I love hearing from, and I genuinely love hearing from all of you. But please, just hear what I've got to say, because like I said, it's going to be contentious. Before I go into that contentious part, I'm going to start off with giving you a bit of, I guess you could say, side information, which does apply to this. But I'm going to give you this information and park it to the side. Tyson Fury has received some criticism from Dillian Whyte. On the night of the fight, after the fight, Tom Saunders, the father of Billy Joe, basically got up from his seat and tried to jump over, he did jump over the barrier and made a beeline towards the ring. He was obviously going to see if his son was okay. Now, this was commented on by Mike Coppinger, the journalist, who put up the video clip. And he basically said it's bang out of order that the security guard treated him in this way. Now, if you see it, Tom Saunders is a man in his 50s. Yeah, okay, nobody should be jumping over the barrier to run towards the ring, right? But everybody does it, okay? Whenever you see a fighter's been hurt or something like that, their families do this all the time. It's commonplace in boxing. He's concerned about his son. Now, the security guard surely knows that Team Saunders are in that little section. He's got to act with a little bit more control as far as I'm aware. He can't necessarily let him run through without realizing what's going on, but control yourself. This was a very aggressive push. Now, Tyson Fury is seen getting up from his seat after Tom Saunders goes down, and he runs to the barrier. And he seems to lean over the barrier, and he's sort of like waving his arm as though he's trying to pull someone back. And then you see him do his hands like, calm down. Now, by the time he gets up, it seems as though he notices there's a melee. I can't know for sure whether he knows who was involved in the melee. Because initially, the angle that the interception happens, there are a couple of people in the way, in his line of sight. So maybe he just didn't see that it was Tom Saunders. He's seen a melee. He has no idea what's going on. Alternatively, maybe he was shocked by what was happening. So he was thinking, well, what's going on here? I don't know. You tell me what was in the mindset of Tyson Fury. Dillian Whyte's take on it is, and I quote, "You are a coward. I can't believe you stood by and watched your mate's old man get roughed up like that. You could have at least stepped in and calmed the situation down. What a coward. You are not a gypsy king. You're a gypsy coward." Now, Tyson Fury replies, this is all on Instagram, right? And he replies, actually it's also on Twitter. He replies, at Dillian Whyte, in quotation marks, the can man. More like the can get knocked out by a 41-year-old bum. 41-year-old man, hashtag bum. He's referring to Alexander Povetkin. Dillian Whyte then responds with, calm down, gypsy coward. You're no king. If you thought I was a bum, you would have fought me years ago when it was ordered by the WBC. Keep conning the public. Now, what happened there? Was Tyson Fury shook? Did he get afraid of security? Unlikely, right? Not in a fight. The heavyweight champion of the world is not going to be afraid of some security guard, no matter how big he is. I know a street fight is not a boxing fight, but I highly doubt Tyson Fury is afraid of this guy. But is he afraid potentially of picking up some sort of knock, an injury, just before this massive fight with Anthony Joshua? The last thing he needs is to pick up some sort of injury. Imagine he throws a punch and he breaks his hand. Oof, 100 million? How much is that going to cost you? The thing is, if one of your friends' fathers is pushed to the floor, though, is that even going to cross your mind in the heat of the moment? Are you not going to act and then later on beat yourself up about the fact that you got into a brawl? I don't know, man. It's unusual. Now, I don't believe he's afraid. I think if you're asking me my genuine opinion, I think the most likely occurrence is that he just didn't realize what was going on. He might have been looking at the crowd when it occurred. He sees somebody fall over. He jumps up. He thinks, what's going on here? And other people are jumping over. And before you know it, he realizes, okay, there's been pushing and shoving with security. It sort of calms down. He wants to calm it down. That's me speculating. I have no idea. You tell me. But this is going to be, I'll bring this up later. We'll come back to that. Park that to the side. The reason I'm bringing this up is because some unusual, what I would consider to be unusual behavior occurred from Tyson Fury post-fight. Very soon after the fight, he boards a plane to go from Texas to Miami. He did copy in Billy Joe Saunders, and he says, we now keep on moving forward in this journey through life. In God we trust, okay? So he said first, we thank God for everything and everyone around us after a great week in Texas. And that's when he said the rest of it. Now, some people considered this to be unusual. Why would you leave your friend who's just had a terrible defeat? Physically, he's a state and he's going to need an operation. And emotionally, he must be in a terrible, terrible place. Emotionally, psychologically, he must be in a terrible place. Now, other people have said, hold on a minute. There are COVID measures in place here. What's he going to do? He's not going to go and sit by his bedside in the hospital. He can't possibly do that. There would have been protocols. He can't do that. Billy Joe Saunders, he would have spoken to him if he was okay mentally and just gutted at the defeat. And as far as they're concerned, the doctor said, look, it's quite a serious operation, but you're okay. You're not going to, you're not going to die, God forbid. It's just, it's going to take a number of hours to fix this. The surgery is going to be overnight. I'm fine, Tyson. Off you go. Billy Joe might have said to him. So Tyson Fury boards the plane and goes to Miami, and he did post a video of him training. So maybe he had a training camp lined up, right? Here's the thing, though, because he also went to the beach. Here's the thing, though. If Billy Joe Saunders had won, some people say, well, would he really have been running off to a camp in Miami if he did go for training? So clearly it was a last-minute decision. It's not something that he had planned beforehand. It must have been a last-minute decision. Additionally to that, Billy Joe Saunders has been there for him in his time of need. So a lot of people are saying, what kind of a friend is Tyson Fury? Bear in mind, I am not saying this. I'm relaying other people's views. I want to hear your opinions on this. This is why I'm bringing you this video. But I'm just relaying all the possible views of this particular thing. Now, Billy Joe Saunders, whatever you make of him, he seems to have been a fantastic friend to Tyson Fury. If you go and watch the interview Born Fighter, which is definitely worth watching, Billy Joe Saunders, it's on YouTube. It's an interview he gave in the build-up to the Canelo fight. Really, really good stuff. You'll see him talk about their relationship, how he helped Tyson get to Spain and get his life back on track when Tyson was in a terrible, terrible place. He spoke about, even when Tyson Fury, Billy Joe Saunders, this is going to be the controversial bit I'm going to get to in a moment, but he actually comes across as more considerate than the public persona suggests. And like I said, calm down. I know some of you are screw-facing already. Calm down. Hear me out in a sec, right? But Billy Joe Saunders would speak about when Tyson's low or he's not training well. He's the sort of guy that gets up to music. So he said he was in a sparring session and he was really low and he wasn't boxing well. He was losing the spar first couple of rounds, and then he thought, I know his favourite song. He started blaring the favourite song in the gym, and all of a sudden Tyson Fury goes up a notch and he nearly knocked the sparring partner out 10 times in one round. So he's basically saying he knows how to get him up. He booked a flight for him to get to Spain. Tyson Fury changed his mind and said, I've got this and that. And Billy was like, look, mate, I've booked the flights. You've got to come now. So Billy Joe Saunders is finding a way to pressure him to come because he's concerned about his friend, who's been his friend since 15 years old. Now, bearing that in mind, many people are saying, well, why wouldn't Tyson Fury be there for Billy if Billy's down in the doldrums? Now, there's a channel here on YouTube called YB, and he put out a video to suggest that he believes that Tyson Fury left the Saunders team because he was disgusted at Saunders for quitting. Now, you guys know my opinion on this. I don't believe Saunders quit. I don't believe Dubois quit. I don't believe Brook quit. Okay, I've explained, or Vitaly Klitschko or anything. When it's a life-changing injury or a very serious injury which affects your ability to function, I do not consider it to be a quit in the sense of lacking desire. Okay, I was about to say to you, they're human beings, they're not robots, but even a robot can sustain enough damage where it can no longer function. Okay, so I'm not calling this a quit, but he's suggesting, YB, that Tyson Fury may have seen it as a quit. So according to Fury, and Fury might have said to Billy Joe, you quit. Now, Billy Joe Saunders in that interview called Born Fighter said that him and Tyson have a very, very straight up relationship whereby Billy Joe, if he doesn't spar well, will say to him, Tyson, you sparred shit. Everyone else will be saying to him, oh, it's all right, don't worry, tomorrow. Billy Joe will be going, nah, mate, you sparred shit. And he says it's rare that it happens, but when it does, he'll tell him. If they've got that sort of relationship and Tyson Fury walked in and being insensitive in that moment, said to him, Bill, what are you doing? I can't believe you just jacked it in. You quit. Could that have caused some sort of, I don't know, confrontation where either Billy or someone else in Team Saunders said, mate, just get out? Or, going back to that little melee, could it have been a case of someone in Team Saunders putting it on Tyson and saying, hold on a sec, where were you when the rest of us were ready to throw hands to defend Tom? Maybe it was even Billy. My dad's getting pushed to the floor. Where were you, Tyson? Now, I'm just speculating. I have no idea. Like I said, as far as I'm concerned, I told you my probable speculation of what happened. It's just me looking at it and trying to figure out what happened. I'm thinking he probably didn't realize what was going on, because it's actually happened. Something similar has happened to me in the past, whereby it just happened to be that my friends were winning the fight. I was out on holiday in Ayia Napa, and there were 4 of us, and I'm chatting away to some girl, and as I'm chatting away, I look over and I see one guy go flying, and then I see 2 of my friends punching these other guys. One of these guys had bumped into them on a moped, and I'm not going to say who they were, but they were actually, the person that started this against my mates is actually a known person. He's a musician, let's put it that way, and he's sort of bumped his moped into my mate, and my mate put his hands out like, he was going slowly, he put his hands out like, what are you doing? And the guy said, suck your mother. And my friend just sort of lost his head, started swearing at him. The guy got off the moped and my friend basically punched him, and it kicked off. By the time I realised what was going on, there was one guy knocked out on the floor, and then there must have been at least 5-6 punches thrown. Now, this melee ended quickly. If it had ended quickly in that moment, I had no idea what was going on, and it was happening 5 meters away from me. So you could be in that situation where a brawl can break out, and you literally, by the time it registers what is going on, it's over. Now, is it possible that happened? As in, is it possible that Team Saunders were upset with Tyson Fury? Now, going back to what I was saying before about Team Saunders being a good friend to Fury, to Tyson, it's possible that because of that, they have certain standards, certain expectations. I expect you to back it, or I expect you to have this or that. Maybe we're speculating. By the way, this is not my speculation. I'm telling you what other people are talking about. Other people are saying maybe he had a go at Fury for bottling it. Tell me what you think of that. Now, going back to Billy Joe Saunders and him having certain standards, I know a lot of people, this is the controversial bit, I know a lot of people dislike him and they consider him to be a scumbag and all that. I'm going to say this about Billy Joe. I actually think in many regards, he's a little bit misunderstood. And hear me out, please. The one act that he did that I can't defend, that I think he was bang out of order, was when he offered a girl who was addicted to drugs money to punch a random guy in the face. Now, he may not have known she was actually going to go ahead and do it. So he might have been messing around with his friends and it escalated. She punched him. If that was the case, he didn't really show much remorse about that happening. Okay, they laughed. They thought it was funny. That's the one thing that I think is really bang out of order. Some of the other stuff I feel has been blown out of proportion though. And let me explain why. One of the things he gets a lot of criticism for is for putting out that joke, that video, whereby he advises on how to, if your woman comes at you, so if your woman attacks you, this is the combination you need to throw. Now, when my girl saw this, right, just to give you an example of what I'm talking about here, to explain to you why I have this, the view that I have, and I'm going to elaborate on it. When my girl saw this, you know when your mouth opens like you're shocked, like your jaw drops, you can't believe what you've just heard, but you're semi-smiling because you like almost like it was comedic, but how could he say that? She was like, and what she did at that moment is put her hands up and she hit me with a 1-2. She hit me. She's a southpaw. She's not an actual fighter. I've shown her a few things, but she's left-handed. She hit me with a jab and then a straight left hand. I got to, what are you doing? She kept her hands up. She backtracked into the kitchen, started bobbing and weaving in the kitchen. I'm looking at her like, what is wrong with you? Like, what has just happened? And she said to me, That's just in case you ever think about doing that. Right? Now, the point is, she's a woman, right? She took it as a joke, clearly. There are other people, though, who are not all right in the head, and they're nutters, and they're going to look at that video, and they might act on it. Now, the counter argument to that they might act on it, is that if you're the sort of nutter that hits a woman, you don't need a video to inspire you. And realistically, if you're a normal human being, you're not going to be inspired to go and hit your woman. Now, I come from a generation whereby, I was a little kid. This was actually a bit before my time. But the funniest stand-up shows I have ever seen to this day is Delirious and Raw. Eddie Murphy stand-up shows, my favorite comedian of all time, right? Those two stand-up shows are so politically incorrect. But because it's a joke, you understand. You're not taking anything he's saying seriously, because the motive is what counts, and the motive is humor. Whether you find it offensive or funny is one thing, but the motive is humor. Now, that's not to condone what he did, because they have to understand in this day and age, as public figures that are not comedians, they have to be careful with what they put out there. Tyson Fury was guilty of saying something similar many years ago. Stella Artois is known as the wife beating or the woman beating beer, because apparently it's a very strong beer, and if you drink it, it can turn you a little bit violent. That was the run-of-the-mill rumor. So one time he was asked about what he was doing. He said, I'm just going to finish this Stella and go home and break the wife's jaw. Now, that was also held against Tyson Fury. But you have to understand, when you look at Tyson Fury's relationship with his wife, you can see how close they are. They're very much in love. Every time he has a victory, he brings her into the ring, he sings to her, and it's not fake. You can see there's real love there. They're close. He's a family man. He's made a joke that some people will find offensive, because there are some people, some women, that are suffering from that. But does that mean he's an evil, malicious man? Or does it mean he's a little bit dumb in not thinking about the sort of joke he made? He was in his early 20s here. Billy Joe Saunders is older. You might argue he should know a lot better. But do you really think they're sitting there and they're telling guys to go and beat up their wives? Like, if Billy Joe Saunders found out a guy actually battered his wife because of that video, he'd probably be horrified. He'd be mortified. I doubt that he's sitting there and he's thinking, yeah, man, let me go and inspire someone to do that. It's a silly joke that some people, unfortunately, in this society aren't going to take as a joke, and that's why it makes it inappropriate. But it doesn't make him malicious. And a lot of the things that Billy Joe does, that's the lens I see him through. I see him as being a prankster who goes over the line too much because he's a little bit thick, basically. Some people have said, well, he also mocked Daniel Dubois. Well, what he said is that Daniel Dubois was a quitter and that you can't quit and stuff like that. Now, on this channel, I had Jack Hughes on here, right? And if you notice, Jack Hughes is a guy, we've spoken about this before, who everybody here who saw the interview said he comes across like a really nice guy, really likable. He also felt that Daniel Dubois quit. That doesn't necessarily mean you're mocking someone when you're a fighter. Now, I agree that Billy Joe Saunders shouldn't have said it, perhaps, but you have to try and understand that in the mentality of a fighter, try and understand the mentality of a fighter. He cannot accept, even for a moment mentally, he cannot plant the seed in his own mind that there is any circumstance upon which he could quit. The moment he applies that seed, it's like putting a crack in a glass vase, however you want to pronounce it. A crack in a glass bottle. The structure it's no longer solidified. It's been compromised. Well, mentally, he has to think, there's no way I'm quitting. Now, he was wrong, clearly, and he did go on to quit. But does him believing that he would never quit as a fighter make him malicious? A lot of people have said to me, look at the class difference, the difference in the way they conduct themselves between Daniel Dubois and Billy Joe Saunders. Daniel Dubois, in terms of comments, because the worst act is to actually get someone hit. So that thing that Billy Joe did with the drug addict is the worst of all. But in terms of comments, Daniel Dubois mocked the blind mother of Joe Joyce. Would Billy Joe Saunders do that? I don't know, maybe, but that's below the belt, man. Because no matter how dumb you are, you know that one thing you don't do is mock the disabled. And a lot of people back then felt that that was karma too. I hope that it was just, terrible bad luck. And ultimately, I'm not critical of Daniel too much either, in the sense that I can understand if you're Joe Joyce's mum and Joe Joyce himself, why you would feel that way and want to break his face. I get that. But again, I think Daniel Dubois is just a little bit dumb. And he wanted to come. You can see it when he's talking. All no disrespect to Daniel. I'm sure he's a nice kid at heart. That's my point. But he doesn't strike me as the brightest spark. So if he's been told, listen, you got no personality, which is what a lot of people were telling him, you need to start trash talking. Maybe he had a dumb idea of trying to cuss his mum like a year 4 kid. And he just hit on something that was very stupid in the way that he came across mocking him, right? So the point I'm making here is people are very quick, in my opinion, to either cancel or jump on the case of someone or stigmatize them as evil or malicious. Sometimes you need to look beyond that and try and consider what the possible motives are here. And to me, the way I see Billy is I find it interesting that almost every fighter you see or pundit that knows him all say what a nice guy he is. That's unusual. Guys like Carl Froch. Carl Froch has never been known to mince his words. If he doesn't like someone, you pretty much know about it. Dave Coldwell recently has spoken about what a nice guy Billy Joe Saunders is. Is it because they see that maybe he's been a very good and loyal friend to Tyson Fury and they consider that to be admirable, and they say, you know what, this guy's actually a nice guy. He says some stupid stuff, but he's actually a nice guy. And if he is a nice guy, or perhaps even if he isn't a nice guy, because there's still honor among bandits, as the phrase goes, honor among thieves, maybe, and I'm not saying they're thieves or bandits, by the way, it's just a phrase, but even if he's not a nice guy, maybe there's still that basic street mentality of, you better have my back in a fight. Or, you need to be there for me in my time of need. I was there for you in your emotional crisis, and now I feel abandoned. Is any of this possible? Or are people overanalyzing? Is all this just going to blow over? Is it, as I suspect, a case of Tyson Fury and Billy Joe speaking immediately after the fight? Billy's just said, you know what? Listen, man, it's done. Whatever, I'm gutted. Just go. Forget it. He just needs time to be alone, essentially. Is that what's occurred? Let me know what your take is on this. I find it all very interesting, I have to say. Tom Little is a heavyweight at the UK. And he's retired now. He was a journeyman heavyweight. Tom Little has offered to fight Chris Eubank Jr. in a street fight, in a straightener. After some of the comments Eubank made regarding Saunders or whatever. While he was giving this interview to IFL TV, he looked at his phone and he said, that's Billy Joe Saunders calling me. I better call him back. And he said he was going to call straight back after the IFL interview. So it's good to know that Billy's obviously, out and about, or if he's still in hospital, he's able to call people, talk on the phone. Is he calling his other friend, heavyweight Tom Little, from the UK just to catch up? Or is he in a place of emotional pain and he's looking to find support from a guy who's on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean? In which case, does he feel like he is alone? Let me know what you think on all of this, everything we've discussed. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care. Chat to you soon. God bless.